The music business, as all of you know, has changed, and it's changing significantly. You've still got, the good thing, you still have traditional media, radio, TV, live performances, those type of things and stuff, which has always been the way that many writers and artists make money. But with the new media, emergence of new media quite some time ago, it's not really new if you think about it, the internet and stuff, it's added a whole different dimension to the music business. And some of it good, some of it not so good, particularly as far as the payments and royalties. But the good thing, in all the areas I'm going to cover, practically every license these days, and anytime you license your compositions, whether it's film, TV, video games, dolls, toys, anything like that, there's an online digital element added into the license these days. These things used to be separate licenses, but now they're really folded into all traditional licensing agreements, which is good. So in many cases, you don't have to worry about it not being covered under a license and stuff. Some of the areas I'll cover today, just so you know, is mechanicals, performances of the IMRO, ASCAP, BMI, and stuff throughout the world. Movies, TV, video games. Trailers is an interesting one. Movie trailers and promos and stuff where you can do quite well. Advertising, commercial, apps, mobile games, online instrument lessons, mobile games, greeting cards, interactive dolls, toys, lyric. The whole lyric issue these days is interesting because there wasn't really a market for lyrics in the past, or not much of a market. And these days, the online lyric sites do very well. So if you do have lyrics that actually resonate with the general public and stuff, you actually can make money these days out of that particular area. So that's one of the positive signs. I'll actually cover the musical theater just to give you an idea of how that thing works. Only because I saw it once being being performed in Dublin right now, and I caught it in New York when it was on the Broadway stage, and it's absolutely an amazing way to make money. The theater, if you're successful. If you're not successful, it's the best way to lose money in the entire world. But so if you're an investor, but for writers and songwriters, lyricists, composers, and the librettist, which is the book writer, I mean, you can do really quite well. So I'll just give you a feel for that also. So, and I think that the main thing is that just keep in mind the business has changed, and to make a living, you have to really broaden yourself as far as your knowledge of how this business is working and stuff. I always tell people, whether it's students or whether it's any talk I do or people that I represent, that, you can be a really great creator. You can have absolutely great songs or compositions if you're a film and TV composer and stuff. But if you don't have a grasp of what the business aspect of those particular areas are, I mean, it's really tough to make a living without that kind of knowledge. And many people that I know have, very good advisors and stuff, but for anybody who's not in that position, you've got to have a good feel for at least basics of how this business works, which is really what the gist of this discussion is tonight. I know most of you know Ralph Murphy, who did a couple sessions here already, and he really discusses the creative side of the craft of writing, which is very important, obviously, because without that, it's a little difficult to be successful. But once you grasp that, once you master that, which no one I know has mastered that yet, except for Ralph, then you really have to deal with the business side. So let me. I'll start off with. One of the areas that, when I first started in this business, it was a significant source of income. Back in the 70s, when I started back in New York, it was mechanicals, which are record sales in those days, obviously, singles and albums, and performances, the IMRO or the ASCAP type royalties that come in from radio and TV performances primarily. So those were the two major sources of income. These days, the mechanicals, obviously, as I think most of you know, have come way down. The record sales have decreased significantly, but it's still a way to make money if you do have the right product and do have the number of compositions that are out there that are actually being sold or downloaded. So I'll cover quickly what the rates are, because it's different in the UK, Ireland, and in Europe than from what it is in the United States. So over here, it's normally a percentage of the, I'll list the rates just so you have. For physical product, which is decreasing 8.5% of the dealer price. For downloads, 8% of the gross revenue of the download. So you've got two different rates there. For streaming services, 12 to 15% is the revenue on the revenue base. Interactive streaming, 10.5 to 12% of the revenue that comes in. So you've got these various percentage rates of all these different type of new media. And as I said, the physical product obviously is decreasing significantly, and album sales are down also. In the US, it's a little bit different. There's actually a penny rate for every time, if one of your albums or one of your songs is on an album that's sold in the United States, it generates 9.1 cents, which goes to the music publisher from the record company, who then shares it with the writer. And a lot of writers have 75-25 deals with music publishers where they're getting the writer's share, which is half the money, and also they're getting half the publisher's share. So in effect, many writers in the US are getting a 75-25 split on things. That's for physical product, and they have the same rate for download. So if you have a downloaded song in the United States, it's still 9.1 cents. So you have exactly the same rate, which is different from over here. We have different percentage rates. There's also, if you have a ringtone, it's 24 cents in the United States, goes to the publisher, shares with the writer. There's also many other different configurations, and I'll mention them just so you know that they're out there, because they're all new media type configurations that do actually have royalty rates attached to them. There's interactive streaming, there's limited downloads, paid locker services, which is a cloud storage with on-demand streaming, purchase content lockers, free cloud storage with digital download purchase, mixed service bundles, mobile phone comes with a music service, limited offerings, subscription service with limited genres of music. They focus it on only one genre of music, and music bundles like a CD with a digital download, two types of music in one bundle for a certain price. Most of those things, there's not much money in these things, but they're normally a percentage of the revenue that comes in to the service that's doing it, and it's less the PR performing rights fees and stuff. But the only good thing is that there is money being generated for all these different kind of configurations. So, and I'll give you an idea. Just I mentioned there's not much money in this. Here's a couple examples to give you an idea. Here's the okay. Here's a free non-subscription ad-supported service. Okay, we all know what that is. There's like 24 different lines trying to come up with a royalty calculation, which the writer and publisher get. It starts out with the service revenue, the number of subscribers, label payments, label rates, everything. By the end of the day, the per stream rate was 0.000048428. So, and that's in US dollars, so you can translate it into pounds or into euros and stuff. So, and I'll give you one other one. It's this is a little higher. This is a standalone portable subscription, which is RDIO. Is it radio? I think it's over here still. This one came out to 0.000691668. So it's much higher than the other one, but still you need probably 1 million performance or streams on this thing to actually, see a check and stuff. But again, the good news is that there are rates set. Hopefully in the future, one of these things will take off. Most of these things will not take off in the United States or elsewhere. And, money should be generated. How the rates are decided back in the United States is that there's a copyright royalty board, which is designated by Congress, which is 3 royalty judges who decide what the rate should be for this particular area and for the performance area also in some cases. And they just had a hearing. They're currently going through hearings right now with all the music publishing community and all the record companies and all the tech companies, all as to try and decide what the rates will be for all these different configurations starting in 2018 for the next 5 years. So starting in 2018, you've got a whole new set of rates coming up in the United States for all these type of configurations, including permanent and physical product as well as digital product. The interesting thing also, if there's a service in that a lot of companies get, it's called SoundScan, and the great thing about it, it's easy to track sales these days in the digital as well as the physical product area, because SoundScan goes to each country, and they actually, I'll give you the one here's for digital tracks in the United States. This week's sales for Justin Timberlake, I know it's your favorite artist, 118,000 this week's sales, 1,292,000 sales to date. And then they break it out. 1 million of that was for digital tracks, and about the rest were physical products. So you can see the imbalance to digital these days is huge. There are still some acts. I have one here with Red Hot Chili Peppers. They had 107,000 sales to date, 57,000 was digital. So at least there are some acts still out there who are doing physical and digital about the same. Country artists do a lot of do physical more than digital, but most of the other stuff like Drake and people like that, it's almost 100% digital these days. But SoundScans is great, and it covers every country. I'll give you an example. Here's Ireland. Justin Bieber again. I'll use that 8,772 years sales to date. The Trolls. 6,000. So, not a lot of sales in Ireland, but at least it's covered just as every other country and stuff. So it's a great source and stuff. The second area, which is still, for most songwriters and music publishers, is the strongest area of continuing source of income. It's the performance right. It's a right that's handled by IMRO here in Ireland, PRS in the UK, SACEM in France, GAMA in Germany, APRA in Australia and New Zealand, SOCAN in Canada. In the United States, you have three entities that are actually performing rights organizations who are licensing music and collecting money in there. So it's really it's not unlike any other country where there is competition between performing rights organizations. In every other country, there's really one company that's handling this particular right. And as you know, what IMRO does or what ASCAP does is they negotiate licenses with the users of music. Could be any type, could be radio, television, pay cable, hotels, restaurants, live concert performances, anything where music is being performed. And they negotiate a license, they collect the money, and then they pay it back to the writers and publishers based on whatever payment formulas they have and whoever has performances in each of those areas. Now, in the U.S., it's a very large business, and it's over $2.2 billion is collected by ASCAP, which is the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. It's a writer-publisher-owned organization similar to IMRO that was formed in 1914 by John Philip Sousa, Irving Berlin, and all the great writers of the day in order to collect money from live performances, obviously, in those days. BMI is the second organization formed by broadcasters called Broadcast Music, Inc. Both ASCAP and BMI collect about $1 billion each in domestic and foreign revenue. So you can see it's a substantial amount of money being generated. CSAC is the third organization in the U.S., SESAC, which is a smaller organization that's privately owned, and it's a for-profit company, and they collect about $200 million. In their thing. There's additional competitors coming into the market lately based on a lot of things that are going on in the United States as to the Department of Justice and other things. Now, the things, I'll give you an example of, and this would apply to IMRO also, but I'll give you an example of what the states look like and where the money is coming from. It gives you an idea, if you do have success back in the states, where it's coming from. About $700 million total comes in from broadcast and cable TV. That's all television, pay, cable, free, any over-the-air TV. About $375 million comes in from radio. $285 million comes in from general licensing, which is all the live clubs, bars, grills, wired music services, concert halls. So it's a substantial amount of money that's coming in just from that particular area. There are hundreds of thousands of users, obviously, in that area. The online world, again, so put the online digital world into perspective for you, generates about $160 million of that $2.2 billion. So you can see it's a very small amount of money is coming in from the online world. That's all uses to writers and publishers in the United States. And it's a big issue, obviously, which I'll go into in a second, but it pales in comparison. That's why to make any money in the U.S., you've got to be on traditional media. That's similar to the case in most countries, but the rates for the online stuff are very low. And unfortunately, there's one other aspect of for U.S. writers, about $700 million comes in from foreign country performances, from IMRO, from PRS, from Sweden, from you name it. There's reciprocal agreements between all these societies, which is how you get paid for your works outside of Ireland. Through these reciprocal agreements with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC in the States and foreign societies and other countries, money flows back and forth. So they are collecting for you, just as we, ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, are collecting for you, sending the money back to IMRO, just as you're collecting for U.S. writers and sending the money back to ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, depending on which organization the writer is a member of. One of the things about the United States is that both ASCAP and BMI are under consent decrees with the government. All that means is that based on some antitrust allegations back in the 1940s, the government came down and they made a settlement with ASCAP and BMI as to which kind of regulates how they do business in the States. One aspect of the consent decrees, which has a large effect on you and everybody else in the United States and throughout the world, is that the rate courts were established. So if a user, let's say the radio industry or a local TV industry or HBO or a hotel industry or a restaurant association industry, if they can't come to an agreement as what the fee should be for the use of ASCAP or BMI or CSAC music, which includes all of your music, because through these reciprocal agreements, you're part of those agreements, license agreements in the United States. If they can't come to an agreement with the user, it goes to a court in New York, and there's a trial, and the judge actually decides what the fees should be that writers and publishers should be getting for performances in that area. And in the online world, many of the Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, many of the users in the big services in that area have gone through the rate court, and the rates that the judge has decided have not been terribly good for writers and publishers. So that has had an effect on the very low rates that the U.S. is getting now for the online performances. Like I said, radio and TV, traditional media is great. The other areas is hopefully it'll change in the future. But as of right now, it's not very good. And I'll get through give you an idea of some of what these figures are to really put it into perspective. But that's really, and just keep in mind that, as an IMRO member, you can choose ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC in the United States to represent you. So you have a choice. The default is going to ASCAP if you don't make any choices, I recall. But the good thing, you are being represented outside just by being a member, being represented in other countries, including the market of the United States. One of the things about what you do have to pay attention to, if you do have success in the States, all three organizations are very different from each other. They have different payment schedules, they have different contracts, they have different formulas, different organizational structures and stuff, which can have a significant effect on the amount of money that you would make from a performance. So it's just something to keep in mind. IMRO has information on all of this, and but you just keep it in mind and stuff, because the payments are very different between the organizations for the same type of use. But as I said, it's a very lucrative market, and one can do very well, obviously, if you have success over there. I'll give you a couple examples just to have a feel for. Because I've mentioned, if you're dealing with $2.2 billion, you're dealing with a very high, for whoever's successful can do exceptionally well. I mean, people who are catalog stuff can do well. I mean, you can do well there anyway, but I'll give you an example of a high-end, like #1 pop song. Just like this is a little bit extreme, but these songs do generate this type of money. For regular radio performances, this one major hit over a year performances generated $400,000 in regular radio money. Then they have ASCAP and BMI have bonuses attached to these to radio and TV successful compositions, and so there's $400,000 in regular money, then an additional $900,000 in bonus monies, which totaled $1,300,000 total for the writer, equal amount to the publisher. So you can see the high-end stuff. I'm giving you an extreme example here, but it's good to know what the high-end is, because then everything comes down from that. But the radio area is still a significant source of income, whether it's you have a minor hit where you just have album cuts that are being performed on radio, or you have a major hit song. Now, you go to TV, and you could have a show, on regular network TV, could generate maybe, $1,000 for one performance on, let's say, Dancing with the Stars or A Voice or a show like that, equal amount to the publisher. For a theme song, you might be generating about $1,000 also to the writer, equal amount to the publisher, if you have a series on network television. If you're a scorer, if you do the background music for a TV show, it normally runs between $150 to $200 a minute for the composer, equal amount for the publisher. That's for the high-end license fee paying stations. There are so many outlets in the United States as far as broadcast outlets, both in local TV, free TV and cable TV, that these, I've given you the top end figures. They can go down to, I'll give you a couple other examples just so you get a feel for, here's like the Disney Channel is $80 for a visual vocal, $48 for a theme, $16 for a minute of score. So based on the license fee of a station determines the value of that particular performance in the United States. So if you have a high-end performance, and I've given you figures for the high end and the low end, if you're in between, those are basically the figures. And the good thing, almost everything is on a census survey, meaning practically everything except for some local TV stations gets picked up on a census basis, meaning everything is picked up and paid on. So if you do have performances over there in the United States, most likely, with very few exceptions, you will be getting paid from ASCAP, BMR, CSAC through IMRO, for the performances. Now, I mentioned the online world. Okay, here's the interesting news. Okay, iTunes, 10 million performances, $1,000 to the writer, equal amount to the publisher. Spotify, 36 million performances, plays, $34,000 total. Slacker, 9 million performances, $1,800 total. YouTube, 54 million performances, $6,000 total for writer and publisher. So, that puts it into perspective as to the online rates being very low in the United States. So if you think you have a huge hit there and people are starting to talk about views and the millions of performances, you're talking about very little money. So as I said, most of the money is still in traditional media. The same thing goes for Netflix and the online streaming services for audiovisual products, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all of those. They program an awful lot of movies. They have an awful lot of original TV programming and stuff. But the rates there, again, I'm going to cover that in a second. But the rates again are very, very small. Hulu, 700,000 performances of a song on The Voice, similar to The Voice here. It came out to $158 total, writer and publisher. Netflix, interesting with Netflix, they never give performance information on their statements. It's confidential. So you'll always, if you're looking at a statement, you'll see 1 next to it for Netflix. You could have a million performances or 1. It'll always show 1. But here's Netflix with a visual vocal for one of the big shows, came out to $430 for writer and publisher total. So, as I said, the online world is very insignificant as far as money goes. It's important, though, as you all know, to be on that. And in the future, it's got to get better than what it is right now, but as currently, it's not terribly great. It's better outside the U.S. than it is in the U.S., but it's still not very good, even the other countries with the streaming services and stuff. Any questions on this? I'm open because I covered two areas.
So actually, any specific reason for the low rates online?
It's
Difficulty in collecting it, or?
Well, no, it's not a difficulty of collecting it because the great thing about it's a good point. The great thing about the online world is you get 100% pickup. So any of these services, you could have 10 billion performances being programmed, and all 10 billion will come into ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, or IMRO, or whomever. That's the good news. The bad news is that the fees, most of them are being determined by justices in court, and the tech companies have just come out ahead. I mean, the justices have not seen the true value. What a willing buyer, willing seller is really what it should be, but it's not that. And what the value of music is on the internet and on the online world. So it's really unfortunate. I mean, the past history of some of this stuff is not great, but at least the legislative area is exceptionally important these days. You have to lobby in Congress and stuff like that. And as I said, I'm still optimistic because the major, all the writers, all of their bodies, all their organizations and stuff have all come down, including the copyright register of the Copyright Office of the United States, and said this is crazy. The way this thing is going, that people do need to be compensated, and there needs to be different types of royalty rates for all these things. So, as I said, I'm still hopeful that it's going in that direction, but it does take an awful lot of big effort these days because the tech companies, as you full well know, are very powerful, and they have very big lobbyists and an awful lot of money to spend. So, but let me switch off to another area there, because we get bogged down in that and I never get out here. But yeah, I tell you, one of the great things, the movie business. I mean, you've got various different types of films, and you've got major films, major studio films. You got a lot of independent films out there these days. A lot of documentaries, a lot of student films which use music and stuff. So the audiovisual film area, to me, is an area that I think is really important for any type of songwriter or composer or publisher and stuff. And I'll give you what a typical license. Let me give you some examples of the motion picture licenses. They're relatively easy as opposed to TV, which I'm going to cover next. And here's the things. And if you have a song, let's say you get a call from a music supervisor or a licensing clearance person, or normally the people who are picking music for a particular film, almost any type of level of film, whether it's big or small. The request will come in. It'll list the identity of the company, identity of the film. They'll always give you a synopsis of the film so you know what it's going to be about. They'll give you the name of the composition they want to use. A scene description, you always want that because it describes how that song is going to be used in the particular film. So you don't want it all of a sudden to be used in some kind of context that you would be very unhappy about. So you always want a synopsis. This goes also for the master recording if they're using the master recording. How it's going to be used, visual vocal, background instrumental, visual instrumental, theme song, opening and closing credits. That all affects the price. The duration of the use, how long it's going to be, the territory. Most film licenses are for the world, obviously, because they do want to broadcast a film through every country of the world and stuff. There's a lot of exceptions to that if you have documentaries or sometimes you have film festival licenses only, which are much more limited, which actually give the right to use your songs in a particular, let's say a documentary or an independent film, only for film festival purposes, very limited distribution. And how those deals work is the price will be much less than a normal license fee would be for that particular use. But what those deals look like, they build in options. So if all of a sudden the film or documentary goes beyond the film festival, the ability to show it at film festivals, somebody picks it up and distributes it beyond that festival, you have options built in there that you would get additional money as a synchronization fee. And you could have some of these things are based on if it goes into different, if it goes beyond the film festival into countrywide, into foreign countries. Some of them have box office premiums in it, where if the film does a certain amount at the international or local box office, you get additional monies in these options. It could be $500, it could be $1,000, whatever you negotiate, that if the film becomes successful, you at least get compensated for the film's success because you took a very low quote at the start to get the song in the film. So, those type of licenses are absolutely great. The rights requested, I'll give you a couple examples. Most times, as I said, they want them worldwide, but let me just give you a couple examples of these. Here's the factors. If you're charging for a song, and as I tell you, I'm used to higher studio film prices and stuff, but these factors play into any type of negotiation. It could be the smallest independent film or a major studio film. These are going to come into play. How the song is used, overall budget for the film, that's the major criterion, the budget that the people have to spend for money. One of the interesting things about that, I mentioned trailers before as a very interesting, and it can be a lucrative source of income when your song is used in a trailer for a movie or the promo for a movie, because that comes out of the marketing budget of the film company. It's not part of the music budget, so there's always more money in that type of budget. That's why getting trailer music, when your song is used as a trailer, it can be substantial based on what a normal sync license would be. Stature of the song, obviously it's a hit song versus a new song, a famous standard. Duration of the use, whether there are multiple uses of the song. That's always important because if a license comes in and they want to use your song multiple times in a film, it has a thematic quality to it. It becomes, maybe it's part of the personality of a character, or it ties a particular emotions together throughout, or it's just thematic to the ambiance of the movie. But if they continue to use it, you always charge more for that than if it was just a single use on it. So that's why multiple performances is always a trigger to think about something else. Duration of the use, term of the license, as I said, it's almost always life of copyright, with the exception of the type of film festival licenses I mentioned, where you could have options in there, a short-term license, 2 years, 5 years, with an option for the program, for the film producer to extend it beyond that if the film goes, into general distribution. So, but it's rare. Most of them are life of copyright. Whether there's a change in the original lyrics, that's an important one because a lot of times you'll find that they might want to change the lyrics to a particular composition. And first of all, you've got to check if you're the publisher or the owner of the copyright, you've got to check with whatever your agreement is with the writer, because most writer and publisher agreements have restrictions where the writer has to approve certain uses. Some obvious examples are for film, some writers don't want their songs used in violent scenes, or nudity is a big one, or various other types of things they'll actually put in their agreements. Well, with writers that the publisher has to go to the writer to get approval for those things. So that's an important thing. And lyric changes are always have to be approved by the writer, because it could significantly affect the future of that particular song if all of a sudden they change the lyrics to something that you don't particularly care for, which has happened. There's a couple things which really doesn't apply that much. There are sometimes they're doing a movie about, let's say, the Doors or Janis Joplin or some personality in the music area where, as you know, films take a long time to film and finally come out and stuff like that. They'll ask for exclusive holds on a particular composition. Obviously, these are compositions that are performed by that particular person during their lifetime or during their career and stuff. And so a lot of times you'll have, very big money being given to the music publisher on an option basis. They could be, $5,000 to hold the song for 6 months, additional $5,000 to hold it for an additional 6 months. What it does, it keeps the song off the market, but it preserves the right for that particular filmmaker to use that song in that particular film, which is identified with that particular artist and stuff. So it's a rare, but it does come up when you're dealing with that type of situation. Yeah. So sometimes what you'll find also is that a producer, a film producer, will go to a particular publisher and look at that publisher's catalog. It happens with bigger publishers normally, and they'll make a deal, a blanket license for multiple songs out of that catalog. So you may get lower fees on a per composition basis, but you'll have a lot of songs from that particular publisher being used in that particular film. So, it really works out good for everybody, because if you have a good catalog, you may get a per use fee that's a little lower than a single song might get, but you're getting a lot of your songs from your catalog into that particular film. And, always keep in mind that, everything that I always think about is the back-end money in audio-visual product, and film and TV are two perfect examples. Because, I know that films, initially they're released in the theaters, it's called the theatrical releases, and with the exception of the United States, every other country has theatrical royalties. The IMRO or PRS or whomever is collecting a license fee from movie theaters and paying it back to the writers and publishers who have songs or score in the movies that are being performed in movie theaters. In the U.S., then, unfortunately, from a decision back in 1948, movie theaters are not, they're exempt from license fees. So, but in every other country of the world, you can do really quite well, even in smaller films, because it's based on the box office. It's normally like 1% of the box office. That's a general range figure that I use a lot of times. General goes to all the writers and publishers of music in a film. Obviously, films go to television, free broadcast television, cable TV, satellite television stuff. So, that's, once it's out there, this thing can be broadcast for, the life of the copyright on it. So, and hopefully you'll continue to get royalties on it. That's why anytime that when I'm talking to people and they're worried about doing a sync license and they're worried about the fee that they're charging, I said, look, unless it's a really well-known standard where you've got a certain range of fees that you really need to maintain, you always want to get into a film or a TV project, because even if you make a mistake on the sync license, the synchronization license, which is a license that you signed to put that song into that particular audiovisual product, even if you make a mistake on it, you're not giving up the copyright, and the back-end royalties can be significant if it does become successful. Or even if it's not successful, every time it's broadcast, you're still getting some kind of royalty, being generated for any broadcast of that film. So my feeling is always, I'm always looking at the back-end royalties on situations. And so never worry about the fee that you charge. Let me give you a couple examples, let me give you one example of what this license looks like. And it's like a 3-page license. composition, who the writer is, the territory is the world. It's a major feature film here. It could be actually Twilight Saga. The term in perpetuity, nature of the use, background vocal up to the full length of the composition. So you know it's only one use. Grant of rights, broad grant of rights. They can perform this thing anywhere, in any type of media, now known or hereafter invented. So that's the broad clause there. And I'll give it, said all forms of television, including without limitation, free, pay, and basic origination TV, whether programming is transmitted by over-the-air broadcast, microwave, cable, closed circuit, direct broadcast satellite, via the internet, whether it's streaming or downloading, or by other means now known or hereafter devised. As I said, it's a real broad range of, the clauses are always very broad. They cover anything now known and hereafter devised. The license fee will be in there. There's a warranty where you're guarantee that there are no samples involved in your composition. You have to be very careful on that, because if you do sample somebody else's work, in your song, or even in your sound recording, in the master recording, if you're sampling somebody else's copyrighted work and putting it into your own, you've got to clear that particular work, that sample. Because if you don't, you can lose all the royalties on it 100% for an unauthorized sample. So, and again, any film or TV producer will always want that you warrant that you're not using any samples, other people's works in your work. And if you do, that you have an agreement, and they want to see the signed agreement, that you have the right to issue that license, including that sample. So again, it used to come up a lot in the rap hip-hop field, but it's not that uncommon in pop music, where people are sampling other people's works and putting it in there. And most times, giving credit, making a deal with whoever the other copyright owner is, but in other cases, not making a deal, and then unfortunately, when it's discovered, they can lose all royalties whatsoever for the future of that particular composition. So, screen credit, important. Normally in the film area, songs are at the end in the crawl at the end. If you have a very well-known famous group, I remember the Bee Gees and Saturday Night Fever had a full-frame credit near the start in the opening credits for their songs, because they were so well-known. Saturday Night Fever was a big hit, but it's very rare you see a full credit in the opening credits. It's always in the closing credits in the crawl at the end. And it's funny in L.A. where I live, a lot of people do actually stay around for the credits, because a lot of people in the film and music industry, they're there. But in every other country, people walk out immediately. I'm looking for the last thing right before the copyright notice, which the film is over and the lights come on. They list all the songs. So you want to see your name in lights, got to wait till the end of the credit roll. But that's basically the type of license that you're signing in the film and TV area. But again, I mentioned that theatrical royalty thing because, so I'll give you an extreme example again, just to reinforce the point. I signed James Horner many, many years ago in the 1980s. He was the composer, the late James Horner actually, he was the composer of Avatar and Titanic, the two biggest films of all time. And the theatrical box office for outside the U.S. was over $4 billion for those two films alone. And so if it was 1% of the box office from all these foreign countries for this theatrical royalty to he and the publisher, it can be a significant amount of money. I use it, it's an extreme example, but it just goes to show, anywhere in the box office thing, money is being generated for movie theaters. So it's really good, and IMRO does a really good job of tracking that information and making sure that Irish writers and publishers are paid. TV, another very interesting area. There's so much programming going on these days in the traditional media, and with Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, all of those online, YouTube, because all of them have put a ton of money into original programming. And so most of the programming you're aware of is what you see on traditional TV. But you start going to all these, streaming, audiovisual streaming services, which all of them started out as just streaming pre-existing works. Now they're all into original programming, because that's really where the money is, and that's where their main profit is. So you've got tens of thousands of hours being produced of this type of programming. So the opportunities in this area are really absolutely tremendous if you have some kind of an insight into the whole thing. I'll mention some of the fees for TV. and remember, these are U.S. fees, and it's, but I just give it just so you know what they are. For like a song and a regular, major series and stuff, could be $12,000 to $28,000 to the publisher just for putting a song into one TV episode. Baby band might earn $2,500 to $5,000 total. A theme song, well, that's significantly more, but for most TV shows, the money is nowhere near those figures. I throw them out just to see what the high-end U.S. market network TV would be. In every other country of the world, they're way below this, as is most U.S. TV. How a lot of these deals work these days, and it really depends on the type of show it is, a dramatic show versus a music-centric show. Now, the dramatic shows are relatively easy. The formula, they used to be normally a 5-year license where they would use this, they could have a 5-year license to put a song in an episode of a TV series. Then they'd have an option to renegotiate that fee after 5 years. I mean, in the early days of TV in the 50s and 60s, that made sense. These days, you never want to renegotiate a song license. So almost everything these days is an all-media license, which you've got 3 variations in this. It's an all-media means that all television media, you make a synchronization license deal for a particular fee for all media with a home video option. All that means is that if they send the series to home video, which many of them do, you get an additional fee as a publisher as part of the negotiation. The second type of option is all television, which includes the home media. So it's one license that includes home media as well as all TV. That's what most successful shows are doing. The third one is all media excluding theatrical. All that means is, here's the list: TV, home video, internet, mobile phone, any other media over which TVs are shown or distributed, all TV transmissions, all digital and broadband transmissions, including streaming and download rights, all audiovisual devices now known or hereafter invented, including in context trailers and ads. The only thing that's excluded from that license is theatrical, which means if there's some reason this thing went into movie theaters, that's a whole separate license. So, which is very rare for a TV. Sometimes you have television movies of the week or long-form TV broadcast, which they'll actually put into mainly European movie theaters. It doesn't happen in the U.S. much, but they translate into those type of theaters. So that's the excluding theatrical on it. It's always a separate license. So those are really the basic things that are going on out there. The interesting ones are the music performance, the dance-based or the music-centric shows like Voice, which you've got here, American Idol. Every country has their own version of these type of shows. Dancing with the Stars, America's Got Talent, or Ireland's Got Talent, or England's Got Talent, or you name it. Those licenses you can actually do really quite well, and they're not one-time fees, but they're actually fees that are built into these things that, based on what happens with this particular song in that particular episode, you can actually make an awful lot of money long term. I'll give you an example of, here's the American Idol one. I just gave you a regular dramatic license. It's really short and sweet. It's very similar to a film license. It's a one-time fee and those 3 type of options as to how they can distribute it. No additional fees after you put that song into that particular television episode, except for the back-end monies, which are IMRO, ASCAP, BMI, PRS, SASM, or whomever. Here's the American Idol license, which is similar to all these type of licenses. They list the use, visual and or background vocals or instrumentals, so it's pretty broad, including contestants auditioning, performing, and rehearsing during various stages of the competition. Okay, lyric display, so you can show the lyrics as part of this license, which you don't in these other licenses. Territory, this is centric to the U.S. and its territories, and Canada. Over here, it would be a limited number of territories. It could be Ireland, the U.K., or Ireland, U.K., and Europe. So the territories are part of these deals. Terms are very short for these things, 1 or 2 years, with an option to extend it beyond that. So this license is only good for 1 year of airings. But they all have options in there. If they continue to air this, an additional fee would be negotiated that you as a publisher and a songwriter would get if they go beyond that particular term. The rights are very broad, similar to what I just gave you in that TV license. It covers any type of situation whatsoever. What they also have is that a lot of this stuff is based on the duration of the use. And so if you have a short use or a minute use or an 80-second use or 120-second use, the figure will go up in the negotiation. There's also electronic sell-through. They give you a rate for that when they sell the episode electronically. There's also a rate, real tones and ringbacks. It's the statutory rate if someone goes there and wants it as a ringtone or as a ringback, whatever the song is in American Idol. Audio-visual streaming of clips. Then they have option fees in that for the US, for the Canada, for the world, all with different figures in it. Out-of-context advertising. That's an important one only because all the sync licenses that you use for film and television, they include in-context promos and advertising. All that means is that if your song is in a particular episode or a particular scene in a film, and they use that, let's say in a movie theater to promote the film, or on TV, that's called an in-context ad. There's no additional money for that. If they take your song out of context and overlay it over a number of scenes, then it's a whole separate license where it becomes a trailer, and it can be significant amounts of money. It's not covered in these licenses, but in context is always covered. Okay, there's one. I'll give you one more, just a voice, and then I'll give you the good and bad news about these licenses. Here's a voice, which is similar to the ones that are here. Okay. US and Canada, obviously it'd be the countries over here. Term, 2 years. Media, all forms of TV now known or hereafter devised, wireless, mobile, internet streaming, goes on and on and on. Proposed fees, this was $2,000 for a performance up to a minute 30, $2,480 if it's over a minute 30, so you make a little additional money on that. They can use package clips when they clip the packages. Impromptu vocalizing of songs, not to exceed 10 seconds. So if they're filming, rehearsal, they can pick that up. If they use that, there's additional money put into the pot here. Snippets of contestant performances being reviewed by the contestants. Okay, an additional amount of money if they use that in some kind of a clip. There's options, renewal of all the above licenses, an additional 5%. For life of copyright, $7,000 for all the performances. So they actually have a life of copyright license, so they can use it for forever. If it goes beyond the U.S. and Canada in this case, or if it was a license over here, if it went beyond Europe and the U.K. and Ireland and stuff, there would be additional fee. Electronic sell-through I went through. Audio record sales, including downloads via iTunes. There's always a connection to iTunes on these things, whereas normally the statutory rate, whatever the going rate in your country is for the download or streaming rates, would apply to these. Yeah, okay, so that's basically what these licenses look like. And the funny thing about them is that they're very extensive licenses. But there's no negotiation involved with these things. It's like you either say yes or no, because they send you this license, and they either say you agree to it or you're in the show. If you don't agree to it, you're not in the show. Because what they do is they'll go to publishers beforehand, they'll pre-clear hundreds and hundreds of songs before the show even goes on the air for a season. So they've got clearances already for all these songs. So if you don't agree to these deal terms, they'll just go on to the next song. So as I said, the good news, you're going to be in the show. It's a very complex license. The bad news or the good news is you don't have to negotiate at all. You just say yes or no, and that's it. So that's the world of TV. Oh, one last thing. The interesting thing with when you're using pre-existing hit songs for a show, CSI does a lot. Quite a few other shows use pre-existing songs and master recordings as the theme songs. For those, there's a sync license that's negotiated. Let's say for a major TV show, it could be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a CSI to put that song into that for the theme song of that show. As how those deals work is that for every new episode of that show, there's an additional sync license being given. So if it's a pre-existing song and you have, let's say, 22 episodes of a series in a particular season, every one of those new episodes, there's a separate sync license that goes to the music publisher who then shares it with the writer. That's very different from a regular theme song to a TV show where the only thing is you get a one-time fee and that's it. So, and remember, the back-end monies from the performing rights organizations can be significant for theme songs or any type of uses, but the theme songs are absolutely great. So just keep that in mind. Everything I've said applies to the master recording also. In all these TV and movie licenses, there's a thing called most favored nations, that when you see it MFN in the agreement, and whatever the sound recording owner is, they'll get the same amount as the music publisher. And if you're the artist, then it really, as opposed to the song and the music publisher, where it's a 50-50 split or conceivably a 75-25 split in favor of the writer, if a co-publishing deal is in effect. With the record company, it really depends on the agreement that the writer, that the artist has with the record company. Sometimes they're considered a 50-50 split. Other times they will take the position that it's whatever the royalty percent that the artist gets, let's say it's 10-15%, that's the fee that the artist will get on those type of things. But as I said, the master recording is treated the same as the song. So which you can do very well, particularly if you have a large distribution throughout the world, you're getting continuing royalties and all this stuff. Yeah, no, it's like, it's a good question because it relates to how do you get your songs out there. As I said, it's easier if you're talking about documentaries or, I teach at USC and they put a lot of good films out of USC, so I tell the students there, I said, look, if you're in the music business program, which I teach, go and meet the people who are in the film school or the audiovisual school, because that's where your connections will lie in the future. Because the directors normally hire people of their own age, in many cases, or they have favorites that they'll particularly like. That's in the scoring field. But with the song field, most films have a music supervisor involved with them. This could be the biggest studio film or the smaller independent films. A lot of times, whoever's doing the film will choose their own works. They have to go to a publisher to get permission to put those songs in the film. So the music supervisors are the most important still to this day. And they're about the only people who are still, in the main, accepting unsolicited material. Some of them are not even doing that these days. So they'll take it from people that they know, from a publisher or from a lot of people use lawyers in the States. I don't think that's the case outside the U.S. There are many of the music publishers I know that some of the ones in Ireland here are similar to the United States, where they do have a film and TV department, where they have samplers. They do it online, or sometimes they're starting to do vinyl in the States to make it maybe even stand out to a music supervisor on it. But it's still done through music supervisors primarily, or through connections with the producer, director, or somebody involved in the film. As I said, documentaries and lower end films are much easier to get into, but when you start going up the ladder to films with a decent amount of budget, then you really have some kind of connection. Somebody's got to hear your work, and it's got to be appropriate for that particular film. And these days, this works for TV and for film. Many times they're looking for new material, something that will set, still standards in all the major hit songs, particularly if they're new versions of it, are used a lot. But they are looking for new music, and particularly because the audience for films and television is much younger. It's a younger demographic who are looking for not the traditional music that when I started in the 70s and 80s, people were actually licensing. Yeah, no, I mean, Taxi does it. There are quite a few in the States. As I said, I'm not recommending one or the other and stuff. I said just always be careful as to what you're signing. Try not to make it exclusive, or if it is exclusive, that you can that you're not giving up the copyright, or that it's a short-term exclusivity. If they don't do something with your composition within a certain period of time, that you can get it back. So, I mean, they're all things to look out for. Some of the sites are good, some of them are not so good. I'll leave it at that. Let me do a quick thing on video games. I mean, there's another area that it's a lot of opportunity. Particularly, there's this typical, the console games, those type of things, and then there's the whole mobile game area, which is absolutely fascinating. It's really blown up completely and stuff, where a lot of people have opportunities. I mean, for the console games, you've got, here's the best-selling types of games: dance, fighting, general adventure, first-person shooter, that's a real nice one, party games, racing games, football, general action, et cetera, and stuff, fitness games. I'll give you some examples. I don't know how much people play video games in this thing, but it's a huge field throughout the world. Big console games: Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, BioShock, games from movies, Star Wars, sports and adventure games using music, Madden, NFL, FIFA, soccer, obviously ones. Grand Theft Auto is a huge game as far as music goes, because they've got all the music channels. It's a pretty violent game, but it's, as far as the music goes, they use an awful lot of music, which is my criterion for anything these days. That was a joke. I think it was a joke. Okay. And then the good thing, you've got the music-centered games: Rock Band, Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, Dance Central, Black Eyed Peas, Experience, various other type of games. The interesting things, there are two types of deals going on in this area. For the big console games or anything like Grand Theft Auto, I'll give you a quick summary of a license which really explains how those games work. It's a one-time fee. Forget the Dance Center games, that's different. One-time fee. Here's Grand Theft Auto. The license, it'll be a three-page license. It'll say all versions, episodes, and supplements thereto. Okay. Song, instrumental and or all vocal versions. So you always need stems on these type of songs. You have to have the tracks separated, music track from the voice track. That's also for television or film. You always want different stems because sometimes they'll only want the instrumental version, or they might want to cut the lyrics or use both or something like that. So you've got to have separated in most situations. The fee for this was $5,000, which is pretty typical for this type of a big game. Remember, this Grand Theft Auto 5, it sold 1 billion revenue in about a week when it first came out, and it was $100 million to develop. So these games are like feature films. They're huge. The big ones cost an awful lot of money to develop and can generate an awful lot of income. But for songwriters and publishers, one-time fee, same with the if they're using a mass recording for the record company and the artist. Media type, it's very broad, looks very much like a film or TV license. It covers practically everything you could ever imagine. This one actually goes into all cellular phones and PDAs, online services such as Xbox Live, App Store, online social networking sites, and any of the foregoing successor and predecessors. I mean, that's a term right there. I love that. So in other words, they can perform this thing anywhere, anytime, forever. It'll describe the game as a first-person adventure game. That's being very kind, if you know what Grand Theft Auto is. Type of use. Background use of all and or portions of the song, including without limitation, radio play, cutscenes, so they can use it anywhere, opening credits, this particular type of license. Type of use, I just went timing up to the full use, and also multiple uses within the same game. So they've included both here. Territory, worldwide, games are sold worldwide, obviously. Term, a lot of the video game stuff is a shorter term, 7 to 10 years, because the shelf life of these games is not that long. It's not like a TV or a film. That's really basically what these licenses look like. But as I said, the most important thing to keep in mind, it's a one-time fee. It could be $100, it could be $500, it could be $5,000. But it's no further royalties depending on the sales factors of the game. Now, let me just cover what the other types of games are, the music-centric ones, which I just mentioned. Those where you can actually make decent amount of money, because there's normally a sync license. Looks exactly like a TV or a film license, a synchronization license, to put the song into the video game. Now, a lot of these, they'll have various types of royalty situations attached to them. It's not just a one-time fee. It's a one-time fee to put the song into the game. Then they have one formula is a per unit penny per unit. In this case, it was for the first 500,000 units, 1 cent per unit. 500,000 to 1 million sales of this game, 1.3 cents. It was an escalator. So the publisher got 1.3 cents, which he shares with the writer. When it went over 1 million units sold, 1.5 cents. So there was an escalator based on the sales of the game. So in this case, the publisher and writer continued to make money as based on the sales of the game. Another formula is when it hits certain plateaus. Here was one, $7,000 to put the song into the game, $4,000 additional when at 350,000 units sold, $6,000 additional at 550,000 units sold, and $4,000 additional for every additional 250,000 units sold of the game. So whether it's euros, pounds, or dollars, you just put the dollar, whatever the equivalent is. And here's one where as it hits certain sales plateaus, it's not on a per unit royalty, but as you hit plateaus, you get additional money as a publisher, who then shares with the writer. The last one is, it's called something DLC, it's downloadable content. If your song's not in the original game, you still have an option if the production or the video game publisher allows your game to be downloadable content, meaning consumers who have the game can actually download your composition and the master recording into the game after the game's out. That type of situation, it's normally based on 15 or 20% of the net revenue of whatever that download cost is. So if you have a successful song or a record and stuff that's in the category of downloadable content, which thousands of songs, they want to keep these games valid, so they have all this downloadable content. You can actually do very well based on this percentage of revenue factor for the downloads. So it's much better than a 9.1 cent rate or the rate that I gave you for the other countries. It's a separate negotiated rate, so it can be very good. Yeah, that's enough for that. The trailer thing. Oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
On this.
You say it's a one-off fee that covers everything. Is that everything related to the game, or could they take the song and use it for something else entirely?
No, all these licenses are very specific as to the use. So if it's always for in-game use only, there's all prohibitions always. There's no you don't go. The rights that are granted do not go beyond that game. And so and a lot of times you'll have a Schedule A, which is very similar to if you're writing a score or a song for a feature film or a video game or for a television episode. If you're writing, not a pre-existing song. Almost all those deals, including the video game, if you're writing a new song for it, have a Schedule A which lists all of the songwriter and composer royalties that can flow from that. It includes sheet music, it includes sync licenses if this is used in let's say a video game becomes a movie. There's a separate sync license that you would get if they're using that particular song in a movie. As I said, sheet music, folios and stuff, lyrics, any type of additional use could be a use in an advertising commercial. There's a whole list of things that's always attached to these agreements that actually applies for songs that are originally written for this type of media. You won't see them in sync licenses for pre-existing songs because the rights are very narrow. They only go to the game, and the publisher already has a deal in effect for all other uses outside the game. So that's how that works. But remember, if you're writing for things, it's a whole different contract and a whole different setup as far as back-end royalties than if you're using pre-existing stuff and master recordings that are already out there in all these type of uses. Trailers I covered. Let me just mention one thing about YouTube, the whole YouTube monetization thing. I gave you the performance of figures for the ASCAP BMI and figures that are coming from the States for YouTube performances when something is actually being performed on YouTube, which are pretty bad, to say the least, if you remember those numbers. There's a monetization factor for which publishers and record companies have separately from the performance monies, which you can actually do okay on, particularly if you have the right song and the right composition. Now remember, YouTube monetization is not based on views or performances like the performances are. It's based on the ad revenue that's generated by your videos. So, and to get to the point of your videos being monetized, there's a lot of steps you take I won't bore you with the steps you have to take with YouTube to get them monetized. But the basic thing, you need all rights involved for anytime you're on YouTube and you see an ad next to a composition or a user-generated content or a content that's put out by the record companies, all rights are or have already been cleared as far as that before it goes up there. Because if you have anything on YouTube, let's say you have a song that's it's a user-generated content. Somebody takes your song, puts it in a user-generated content, with or without permission. You have three things that you can do with YouTube. You can ask them to take it down, or even a pre-existing song. You ask them to take it down. You can ask them for metrics, so you leave it up there, but at least you get the metrics as to how many times it's being shown. Or you can monetize it. Those are the three things that you can do with YouTube. But if it is monetized and you do have all the rights, the formula is for user-generated videos, 15% of the net ad revenue that's generated for that video goes to the publisher, who then shares it with the writer. 35% of the net ad revenue goes to the master recording, the record company and the sound recording, and 50% goes to YouTube. Now, if you have a situation where there's no master involved, no master recording, 50% goes to the publisher, who shares it with the writer, and 50% goes to YouTube. Now, YouTube has the option to go to the whoever put that video up, unauthorized, obviously, to give them 15%. But if there's no master recording that's being used, someone's just singing a song on it in their user-generated content, there's no money being generated unless YouTube agrees to it. So in that case, the publisher gets 50%, and the writer gets 50% of that publisher money. And for some of the YouTube videos, I mean, that have millions and millions of views and have decent advertisers on it, I mean, you can actually make some decent money in this particular area. So don't be looking for the performance money, but the monetization money, which is a synchronization license, is really what it is. You know, you can actually do well if you get an awful lot of views. But again, you have to have all rights involved. You can't have a co-writer who doesn't want to do it, or a co-publisher, or even a sound recording. You may have written a song, and the sound recording doesn't want to do it, it won't work. It'll still go up on YouTube. You can take it down, but it will not be monetized. Quick thing, let me do apps, because that's an area that's becoming much more popular and stuff. I mean, you got so many different types of apps out there, which you're all aware of. Many of them use music. And let me just give you a typical type deal with an app, and just to see how this stuff is paid. There was one, the Glee. Everybody remembers Glee, the TV show? Whether we like it or not, we remember it, right? Okay. I watched it. I admit I watched it. Okay. With the Glee had an open mic app, which is pretty. It was interesting because when it first came out, it did very well. The license was about a 3-page license, and they asked you all these questions in the license, and it really related to. Let's see, they had a territory in there. They had a term, the 3-year term for this particular downloading a song into the Glee app. The song title, who the songwriters, who the music publisher was. Description use, mobile open mic application game that features masters performed in time synchronization with scrolling lyrics across the mobile device screen. Users interact with the application by singing into the mobile device's microphone, headphones to score. Difficulty levels are measured by rhythm and sensitive pitch evaluation. User performances are not recorded or transmitted via any medium. Okay, this thing, a lot of people actually bought this app. I didn't, but hey, it's if you want to sing along with the Glee stuff, that's fine. But they had all these things. The media was in here. The full or partial song, full. These are sounding just like a sync license. Will you re-record or use the original artist recording? They use the original artist recording. Will the lyrics be altered in any way? Again, no, as part of the license. Will they display the lyrics in this license? Yes, they're scrolling lyrics as part of this license. Will the file be interactive? Yes, and they describe how. There was no ability to download this and save it. So, you have a lot of restrictions in these particular apps. The most important ones are, because you have Tap Tap Revenge, which is a similar one, but they're all, the payments are all very similar. I'll give you the Apple model, which is the revenue model. Let's say it's $1 to download the song into this particular app, into any app. Apple gets 30%, which is, I'm using dollars and cents here, 30 cents of that dollar. Okay, there's 69 cents left. The developer fee, whoever developed the app, gets 35 cents. So you have a remaining 34 cents. The publisher gets 17 cents, and the record company gets 17 cents. So that's how almost all these apps work. Some of them are percentage, 25% of net revenue, various other formulas, but most of them are the formula that I just gave you, where in effect the writer and the publisher, record company, and recording artist get about 34% of the 99-cent model. And it could be euros, could be pence, could be anything. There's one other thing with these type of, let me just. The mobile games and instruction apps, because we're talking a lot about digital here. Just so you know, these type of games, there's a lot of them out right now. There's very little money in them, and they're very easy to produce. They're not like these console games and stuff. I'll give you a couple of them. Beat MP3 rhythm music game. You're on a screen tapping, trying to follow the icons, and the closer you get to them, it's somewhat similar to Guitar Hero. Ocarina, blow into your phone and use the keyboard, turns your phone into an ancient flute. Just what I wanted. Auto rap, this one is great. You got to get this. Auto rap, turns speech into rap. If you can talk, you can rap. You simply speak into your phone, and the app chops your voice and buries it in a whole mess of auto-tuney goodness. Now, whatever, I would buy just based on that description. The big ones, Sing Karaoke, these are fascinating if you haven't seen them, where you can create do duets with other people, across the globe, where there's split screen, and you can actually sing with a duet with somebody else from, let's say, Australia, or from Russia, or from wherever these things are. And there's also the partner artists, where many major artists now have put their songs out there where you can sing along with them. Where you have a dual screen, you're going to see, let's say, I was looking at one, I think it was Ice-T or Ice Cube on one end, and a girl or a guy on the other end doing the song together. And it's fascinating. And the words can be taken out of the main person, where you can put your words in, but you're supposedly singing along with the scrolling lyrics. You're not supposed to change the lyrics at all. But a lot of these things, they're fascinating. I'll give you a couple examples of what these deals might look like. I gave you the Apple model. And you look at the tunes, the songs that are available just on this magic piano where you play on your iPhone, songs and stuff. Bruno Mars, Survivor, John Legend, Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines, Phantom of the Opera, movies and musicals. There's practically everything in there. So there's nothing that's not sacred as far as these sites go. Let me just give you one. Here's that Beat Fever. There's no continuing royalties, obviously, for this. It was $4,000 to put the song into that particular game, and equal amount went to the master recording. With this one, there was a bonus after 5 million downloads. You actually get an additional fee, but that's rare and stuff. Another one, here was the Magic Piano and some of those other games, with some of the karaoke type games. Territory worldwide, obviously, because you can interact with people throughout the entire world. Media, mobile devices only. That's where these things really are played. Lyrics are included. Lyric alterations, none. And on this one, it was 25% of the US dollar equivalent of the actual selling price of the song to the end user. So just put pounds or euros in there, and that's basically the fee that's happening here. So again, this was a one-time fee on it, and you got an advance. Some of these things have advances where the publisher actually gets an advance to make the song available and put it into the game. So the advance obviously is against royalties in the future, so that will always be taken out first. And most times, sometimes you can share these things with other people on social media sites, but most times you have to register with the site that you're sharing these things, and they're not downloadable. So most of them are streaming. You're sharing it on a streaming basis, not a downloadable basis. So each of these deals are different. It's still an area that's in transition, where you've got so many different types of, you got millions of apps out there, many of them using music, but it's an incredible opportunity. Not a lot of money in there, but there is money, and it's an online game. One last thing on that. The musical instrument lessons off the internet, which is very big, how that stuff works, whether it's guitar, keyboard, voice, whatever. The licenses is a right to synchronize the song in the video portion, okay, like other ones. Right to create sheet music or reproduce lyrics, obviously. Right to stream the lessons to the purchaser, the student, or whomever. No public performance right is involved. Short-term licenses, 2 to 3 years normally. The payment formulas is if it's a one-time lesson, you're just pulling one lesson down, it's normally a percentage of the price of the lesson, most likely 25% of the price. If you're on a subscription model where it's multiple lessons and you've gone into a subscription, it's normally a percentage of the monthly revenue that's generated by that particular prescription model, whether it's a guitar, whether it's piano or something else. And then it's prorated based on the number of compositions that are being used based on your composition. So you're looking at the revenue of the service, number of compositions being used on a subscription basis, and that comes out to be what your royalty is as a writer and a publisher. Similar thing if you're an artist and record company, that's how those deals work, the most favored nations on it. Make sure I still got some time, good. A quick thing on just anybody use greeting cards at all? Anybody buy greeting cards here? Thank God their business is still out there, I think. I still buy them. Anybody do the e-cards? Oh, okay. The e-cards is a very big business in the U.S. And it's funny. It's another way that if you ever have the right song, you actually make a decent amount of money. And sometimes the song, if you look at, you go to a store and you look at particularly the musical cards, the greeting cards and stuff, the songs that they're using sometimes have no application whatsoever to the message of like a happy birthday song with the score of the Pirates of the Caribbean. I picked that one up because the Pirates of the Caribbean theme had nothing to do with Happy Birthday, but they used it in, and some people bought that card actually. So you had a film score who actually had a song and a Happy Birthday card. But how those deals works, it's interesting. They're like a 4-page license. To really simplify it, it's here it is. Name of the song, territory worldwide, cards are sold all over. Term 5 years. They're short-term licenses. Not to exceed 60 seconds. There's always a durational requirement in these type of licenses because it's a card. This one was $3,750 per song. It was a decent-sized song for a major card company. So, and then the royalty is 5% of net sales. So you got an advance of $3,000 to $4,000 to use the song in the card, and then you got a 5% of the net sales price of the card on a continuing basis. Now the e-cards are very similar to that type of formula. They almost match the formula for the regular cards, and some of them, yeah, this one was 3% of the price, a short-term license, and an advance against the first 50,000 units. So again, it's an area that's not a lot of people get into that, but if you have the right song, it's really good. It's similar to like some of the interactive dolls and toys and those type of games and stuff. One of the ones I love is that, I don't know if they have it over here, it's the Hasbro toothbrush, where it's a toothbrush, electronic toothbrush, and it's got a hit song in it, and it's really basically for kids because it says it's a two-minute duration license, so that's the amount that you want people to brush their teeth. And as you brush, the song becomes louder, and I think it streams sounds through your head and stuff. It sounds like a dangerous game if you read the description, but they sell millions of units of these things. And again, this was a territory, U.S. and Canada, but they have them over here. 3-year license, and normally these things are per unit sale, so it could be 10 to 15% per unit sold. And again, it's something you don't think about, but it's a possibility, and that's how most of these games are. They're either a percentage of the revenue of the sales price of the toy or doll, or it's most likely a per unit royalty on it. That's what most of them are. And they're normally higher than the statutory rate or the download rate. Here is one, just a quick one on lyric reprints on clothes and stuff. This one was interesting only because this was using lyrics on their high-end jeans. And whoever designed this license was great because they had 3 different royalties. It was 10% of the wholesale selling price per unit for high-end specialty stores, they named some, 9% for department stores, and 8% for mass market stores. So it's the same jeans being sold in different types of stores with a different royalty rate. So again, it was an interesting type of license if you're using lyrics, someone's lyrics on clothing. I mentioned lyrics as something that was really, no one was paying attention to lyrics anyway. Now lyrics are finally being monetized on the internet. And here's a couple ways that lyrics are being compensated, because a lot of the people go to these lyric sites. And it's really, the licenses, they're very short. Okay, it gives the user the right to search, display, transmit, distribute, and reproduce the lyrics, to synchronize the lyrics to master recordings and audiovisual, to convert the lyrics into digital files, to embed the digital files in a license for people's use, to transmit and deliver files to consumer electronic devices. In short, lyrics are being downloaded into your cell phone here. Normally these type of licenses, they're 50% of the net revenues that come in. So, and the lyric licenses are getting quite popular these days. So that's another source of income that would just go to the lyric writers on a particular composition. There's one that was interesting that just came out where you have short phrases from popular songs being put on soda cans and other beverage cans and stuff. That's brand new. I don't think they're out yet, or they're just coming out. But again, they're using a very short phrase on the can. Here's one: put a little love in your heart. I mean, a perfect phrase. You could pick anyone, from a particular song as long as it's authorized. There's a territory and term. Could be U.S., could be the world, could be Ireland and the U.K. only. There's a 1-year license. There's a 2-month sell-off period where you can sell off all the soda if the license runs out, and then you can't sell it anymore. And it's and the fee was this. Again, it's not a per can royalty. Sounds kind of funny. Not a per can royalty or a per bottle royalty, but it's normally a fee. In this case, it probably runs between $10,000 and $15,000 for a popular song. And obviously, you're not using the master recording. But again, lyrics. People were not thinking about lyrics at all with the internet. That's one of the good things about the internet. It has brought compensation and monetization to the whole area of lyrics, which really were not being compensated almost at all. And the Lyric Find is the main company in this field, but they do a good job on it. Good job. Let me mention one thing, because actually, before I get to I wanted to mention the theater. Keep in mind, for all of you who are artists and stuff like that, there is, in the United States, it's common in every other country, but in the U.S., there's a limited right in sound recordings. All that means is like the right that IMRO or ASCAP or BMI have, the performance right, does not apply to records. It just applies to songwriters and music publishers when you have performances on radio, TV, etc. What the U.S. did, Congress created a very limited right for sound recordings where when they're performed really in 3 basic areas: satellite radio, which would be Sirius XM, non-interactive websites, which would be Pandora, and anything where a consumer is not picking what they hear, but they're just listening to a playlist, or to the cable music channels. I don't know if they have them here, but it's music choice. At the end of the cable stations, there's audio channels of music. And these are, and any similar platforms that stream sound recordings. They're covered by this new particular right. And there's one organization in the United States that collects it. It's called Sound Exchange. And they have reciprocal agreements with all the neighboring rights organizations throughout the world that collects this particular right in Ireland, in the UK, PPL, and I can't remember what the Ireland one is. Anybody know off the top of your head? Oh, what was it? Yeah, REP. And so there's a reciprocal agreement, but it only covers areas that are covered in both countries. So the bad thing about the U.S. is that traditional radio is not covered by this particular right. So that's part of the lack of reciprocity between countries, so on this particular right. But for the areas that I'm talking about, there is money being generated, and it's the biggest source of record company and artist income, newest and biggest source these days. Sound Exchange collected $888 million last year just for U.S. performances for artists and record companies. And how that money is split, and applies to foreign artists who are being performed in the areas I just gave you. How the money is split, it's 50% goes to the record company, 45% goes to the featured artist, and 2.5% goes to any background musicians on a record, and 2.5% goes to all the background vocalists on a record. So this money, the significant amount of money has gone up each year, and it's pretty new. It's only about 15 years old, this particular right, but it's a major source of income, and it does include sound recordings excuse me, and artists from around the world, but only on a limited basis. Only for the 3 areas that I just mentioned: satellite radio, non-interactive websites, and music cable channels. For all the services like Spotify and others that are interactive services where the consumer is actually picking the things that they want to listen to, those are all covered. They are not covered by this type of a license. They're covered by a negotiated license between, let's say, Spotify or the service and the record company who owns the copyright. So, excuse me. In the main, those deals will be a lot higher because the record companies have the bargaining power, and those type of services, the interactive ones, do not have the right to broadcast sound recordings, records, without the permission of the record company. So it's a whole different ballgame from what I just gave you. The Sound Exchange thing is a statutory right created by Congress. Any website non-interactive can use it. They don't have to go to the record company for permission. But for the interactive sites, they have to go to the record company for permission. So that's the big difference in the U.S. about interactive versus non-interactive websites. And it's a significant one for royalties. Again, as I recall, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, they license Spotify's, Pandora's, and stuff on the performance license at very low rates. These rates are much better. Well, one thing I want to mention, because it's something that people really don't think about, but it does apply these days to a lot of people. When I got off the plane, I picked up the paper and stuff, and I had it triggered, Once is being performed here again and stuff like that. The whole world of musical theater. Many people. I signed so many acts in my career in the States and stuff, and I'll give you. And all of these. I just look at like Journey or Sting or Elton or. Journey, Bon Jovi, Foreigner, Billy Joel, all these people. The last thing that they would ever think about is that they would have a song in a Broadway show and be making money. I mean, these are all rock and rollers, and you just didn't think about the theater and stuff like that. It's an area that most people don't think about, but it can be the most lucrative area for anybody as far as songwriters, music publishers, and composers and stuff. I looked at 3 shows and stuff, and keep in mind what's going on with the musical theater. Okay, got new musicals, Wicked, Phantom, those type of things, Revival, Showboat, South Pacific, all the old shows and stuff, and then the catalog musicals, which are the ones I just mentioned: Mamma Mia, Jersey Boys, Rock of Ages, Motown the Musical, Carole King, Beautiful. Then you have some real stiffs: Lennon, Good Vibrations, All Shook Up, Taboo, Ring of Fire, ones that didn't make it. I won't mention the artists whose works those were, but the first ones you all know. So it's not a guarantee of success to have a catalog musical. Also, you have musicals based on films: Lion King, Aladdin, Ghost, Once being one of them. And then you have a new genre of musicals. Hamilton is the biggest show on Broadway right now this last year. It's not over here yet, but it's interesting because it's a show about one of the original presidents of the United States, Alexander Hamilton, which, if you think about it, who would be interested in that? But it was created by this guy, Lin-Manuel Miranda. And it's basically a rap show. It's rap and hip-hop music being used in the Broadway setting in a period piece. So you have costumes, the old costumes from like the 1700s, and it's the biggest thing on Broadway and stuff like that. And what's interesting, what Hamilton did was the writer he was inspired by a lot of different people. I'm gonna mention some: Jay-Z, Notorious B.I.G., Eminem, DMX, Beyonce. But so he actually had in there, he was inspired by a lot of these people's songs, and actually gives credit in all the new compositions that are being performed in the show to all these writers. So all of these outside publishers, from that, particularly the rap and the hip hop world, all of a sudden have pieces of these songs that are on Broadway. I mean, it's just an interesting phenomenon, and it's great that he gave credit to all these people also, because the show is doing $1,900,000 per week. And I'm going to give you the formulas for this area just so you get an idea, because, I looked at Once. Okay, that was a good, Glenn Hansard, Marquita Inglova won the Academy Award, which shows you the things that can happen from these things. Best Musical Theater Album, got a Grammy Award. That show cost $5.5 million to put on. It recouped in 21 weeks and has made $110 million. Just keep these figures in the back of your mind. Spider-Man, another Bono and Edge, another Irish play. Spider-Man cost $75 million to put on Broadway. It earned $212 million and did not recoup its investment. So because the costs were so high in it. So I mention those shows only because what you need to know if you're ever in this area, if a song of yours is ever put in, or if you write in this area, you need to know 3 things: the operating cost of what it costs for that show to run, the original investment. Could be Broadway now is between $10 and $20 million for the big shows. Way lesser for off-Broadway and off-Broadway, and the weekly gross box office receipts. How much money is coming to that show each week? Those are the 3 things, and there are 3 basic agreements. I'll give you a quick summary of them, and you can see from some of the things I just told you what type of money is involved here. You have the Dramatists Guild contract. It's called the Approved Production Contract. That has a formula of, prior to a show recouping its investment, the author, which is the librettist, who's the book writer, the lyricist, and the composer, 3 elements in the author category for this, they share 4.5% of the box office. Once a show recoups its investment, they share 6% of the box office. So just think about a show that's earning $2 million a week just on Broadway. And if you're just the lyricist or the composer, that's 4% of the box office. And if it's generating $1.5 to $2 million a week, 4% of that is an awful lot of money on a weekly basis. And some of these shows, as you know, run for many, many years, and that's just the Broadway run. So, and the second type of formula, which is called a royalty pool, and that's where most of these catalog musicals are in. And all it is they look at the amount of money that comes into a show in a week. Let's say it's $1 million. They look at how much it costs to run the musical, which are very costly to run Broadway musicals. Let's say it's $600,000. So there's $400,000 in profit for that week. The royalty pool is normally 35% of that figure. So all the people who are involved in this pool, which is all songwriters, publishers of pre-existing songs, could be the choreographer, could be the director, all the creative personnel share in that 35% of $400,000 on a weekly basis. That's called a royalty pool. And the investors get the other 65%, whoever's put money in the show. And depending on, and each of those individuals have a number of points in this pool, and depending on the number of points, determines what you get each week. So it's a different type of formula, but you need to know it's a percentage of the weekly operating profits, and all the creative personnel share in it. Also, it can be huge. That's why I mentioned with Journey, with Styx, with REO Speedwagon, Pat Benatar. It's great because they're all on royalty pools. And Jersey Boys did well, Rock of Ages did well. So it's a continuing royalty to the writers and the publishers. The last type of agreement is called a fixed dollar show, where every song in the show gets a fixed dollar amount per week, regardless of the sex of the show. Let's say it's $500 per week per song. So the show could have $2 million in box office receipts. It could have $40,000 in box office receipts. Each of those songs still gets whatever the fixed dollar rate they got. So that's really the whole area of musical theater. It's just a fun area because once you know the basic agreements, you can really see if you're successful in that area. You can really do exceptionally well. One last thing, it's called an underlying rights agreement. And if this thing is based on a film or a book or any type of pre-existing copyright, that copyright owner shares equally in those percents. So if it's a 6% formula for the book writer, lyricist, and composer, the underlying rights owner, the film producer or the book writer, would get an additional 2%. The same thing with the royalty pool. They would share in the percentage of the royalty pool. So that's really the musical theater thing. It's kind of a fascinating field. I just liked it because all of a sudden I saw it once, which is a great, the show has done exceptionally well. And then it continues to tour throughout the world, for as long as the show is valid. And there are all different types of formulas, very similar to the ones I just gave you on this. And hey, I tell you, I want to wish you all the absolute best of luck. And I tell you, the good thing is IMRO filmed this, so if you were confused now, you can be really confused when you listen to when you watch the program. But I think it's great because I myself, the world's changing, and I've covered an awful lot of areas here, and I refresh myself every time before I look at any deal, negotiate any deal, or even talk to people about certain areas because, there's a lot involved, but the basics of it, remember, the basics of a sync license, which is the license that most of you will be dealing with, whether it's any type of media, has a basic structure to it. And I mean, my brother and I covered in our book a lot, but, the basic structure, you listen to any license that I talked about, there's a composition, there's a fee, there could be an advance, there's a territory, there's a term, there's a grant of rights, which is the most important aspect of any license because that allows the user of that license, whoever takes it out, to use it in whatever capacity they want, or it narrows the areas that the composition is used in. So the grant of rights is really the most important clause in any type of agreement. And I said, even if you make a mistake on the fee, if you lowball or anything else, most important thing is to get your music and your songs into any type of audiovisual environment whatsoever. And then you learn from your lessons. You're not giving up the copyright. You learn from your lessons, and the more experience you get, the better you'll be at it. And it always pays to have trusted advisors or people to, who really know what they're doing in this particular field. But I've given you the basics to at least work on. So just keep it in mind, when you're trying to negotiate something yourself. I use lawyers myself. No, but I wish you the absolute best, and I hope it was real help with you, and I really wish you the best. So good luck.